Welcome to our podcast with Ali Sina and myself, the host, Reza John Vedadi. Ali Sina has a podcast in New Jersey. It's called The Garden State Rookies. And then we can find out why it's called that in a few minutes. And I'm the host, Reza John Vedadi, based in London. There's my Instagram and Twitter stuff as well if you want to follow me on that. So, Ali Sina, if you tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I know you're based in New Jersey, and we've known each other for a while. You're very active in the community, and you are one of the people to go to when you want to get things done in New Jersey, New York. That's been my experience. Tell us a little bit about the kind of stuff you've been doing. What's it called, pre-coronavirus, just for a few minutes, and then we get into the discussion about basically what's happening in the world right now and all of that stuff.
Yeah, so thank you for having me, Reza. As far as the question for Garden State Rookies, just me and my cousin and friends, we wanted to start a podcast about mainly sports and just talk about sports in general. Unfortunately now, due to the virus, we haven't been able to do as much as that as of late. So pre-virus, that's what I've been really doing. Just the usual, go to work, come home, gym, podcasting here and there, and some other stuff, but nothing crazy. Now with the virus, so much has changed. So you know how it is.
So before the coronavirus came about and people are not as able to go out, so we can't hold the programs we do, like the Muharram programs or the Ramadan programs, or just maybe a single event program that you would hold just to bring the community together, just so we can practice our faith and learn things like that. Obviously that can't be done now, so everyone's kind of in their own homes. In England, it's become popular. I don't know if you guys are seeing this in stateside, where there's a lot of Majlis, a lot of programs, Islamic programs being held, but it's online. So it would be streamed. People will go on, YouTube or Facebook or whatever, watch it from their homes and participate like that. Have you seen a shift like that with technology due to the coronavirus in your side?
Correct. So before the corona, we did host our Thursday night Dua Kamels at the mosque. We would have the Jummah prayers, so on and so forth, as everyone's been doing. Now, like you said, even with us, we just started doing the Zoom live streaming with the Zoom platform on YouTube and whatever. So we've just begun that maybe about a week ago. We have a couple of programs coming up. And it's going to be quite interesting to see how things are going to be, especially during Ramadan. It's going to be nuts because, one, when you hold Majalis using internet, it's a lot. It could be a lot of complications. Even for us, I know our first event that we had on the Zoom, we had minor technical difficulties. So that's something that's going to be interesting. But other than that, it's different. It doesn't feel the same. Is it great to have these programs still going? Of course, but it's different when you go to the mosque and actually interact with your community members versus just texting and WhatsApping. It's better to have that physical interaction.
So that's interesting, because my next question is going into the whole lockdown we're experiencing in London and New York. New York is the most affected out of all the other states and areas in US, as far as I understand. It's the epicenter in America, and I think London's the epicenter in UK. So outside, streets are quieter, shops are closed. How do you think it's affecting the moral and the spiritual aspect of the community?
In the beginning, I think it was definitely a downer because you have a routine, and when you're on a routine, it's hard to get away from that. But right now, surprisingly, the community is still strong. I've noticed a lot of people are stepping up and they're saying, "Hey," especially for people that have businesses over here, the pushcart industry is really booming in New York. I'm sure anybody that's visited New York, you see there's a lot of push carts. In our community, a good amount of people work on those push
So
carts.
pushcarts is a
So
place where they have like kind of fast food, hot dogs and things like that.
yeah, like hot dogs. Either some people in the morning sell donuts, coffee, gyros. I know the halal platters are big, especially for tourists. So for them, because there's a lockdown in the city and nobody's going to the city, they haven't been working for the past couple of weeks. So community members are reaching out and saying, "Hey, if there's anything we can do, let us know. We're gladly to help." So in that aspect, the community is actually coming together and really uniting in that sense.
That's very good. I mean, we're experiencing that in London as well. We're having people get together, try to help the more vulnerable sectors of the community, not even just within the Muslim community, but neighbors outside, anyone who needs. For example, we had a message today in a group. Someone needs a phone taken from a family member and given to the
Hmm.
father who's actually been admitted to hospital because of COVID-19. So he has no form of communication, and as you know, hospitals are now not allowing patients, family members or friends to visit. So a patient
Right.
or individual could be in a hospital for days, maybe weeks, and not have access to family members, which is one of the hardest part of being in a hospital. Is especially if you're older, if you don't have people that you recognize and you know and you feel comfortable around you to give you that spiritual and moral support. So he put a message and said, look, we need a phone delivered from this part of northwest London to this part of London. And within minutes, alhamdulillah, people stepped up to it, messaged him, and they were happy to do that. So it's more things like that, helping deliver food, helping volunteer to do stuff for the NHS. NHS is the National Health Service in England,
Yeah.
is which is building on our spiritual and mental, because now that we can't go to a majalis, now that we can't participate physically in activities like that, maybe there's opportunities other places that we can take, and alhamdulillah your community is doing that, in London community, in England community, Muslims are doing that. My second
Alhamdulillah.
question
Yeah.
was for you. What do you guys have planned in case, for example, this continues and Ramadan programs can't be held in New Jersey and New York? Do you have a backup plan? Do you have a way of maybe the stuff we discussed, like using technology to try and get the programs that we usually have on a face-to-face basis, a gathering basis?
Yes. So definitely, we do have a backup as far as getting a speaker to speak for 10 or 15 nights using the Zoom. But what's going to be interesting, I'm sure this might have been a question of yours, is how is things going to be, especially when Eid rolls around, and if we still can't do social gatherings, right?
Yeah.
Because of course, for Muslims, that's our like biggest holidays. How are we going to handle that? I'm curious to know. I know you're asking me the questions. I'm curious to get your opinion on this too. That's going to be interesting because it's so weird to have Eid and you can't gather more than what, 5 people, 10 people. So that's going to be interesting. But as far as Ramadan programming, yeah, we're most likely going to do that. We're just going to have Zoom, and that's the best we could do. What about for you guys?
So for us, I mean, and I think this is probably quite similar to the American and Australian and Canadian experiences. A lot of programs, if you know now, it's either broadcast live streamed, so
Right.
during Muharram and Ramadan, or it's uploaded the following day or within that short space of
Hmm.
time. So the technology, alhamdulillah, is there. It's been building up for the last few years, and a lot of people who can't attend. Obviously, there's a stronger spiritual sense of attending because you've made that effort to go there. You see the speaker, you see the community. There is that presence. There is that spiritual presence that you positively benefit from. But then if you find that you can't go for whatever reason, maybe you're unwell, maybe you have to look after children, you're like, okay, I still want to
Right.
benefit knowledge wise and spiritually, even if it's through the medium of technology. So the technology, alhamdulillah, has been building there. So we have the capacity, I think. I think it's just then utilizing it, and then almost we might be become spoiled for choice, because if you think about it, before you was like, okay, I can only attend one physical program. Now I
Hmm.
can really click on. It's become like Netflix, right? It's almost like
Yeah.
Netflix. Like, okay, do I want to speak to,
Exactly.
listen to this speaker or that speaker? But alhamdulillah, they
Right.
record and upload them anyway, so you can benefit from multiple speakers in various ways. It's just like you said. I think the task for us as Muslim is, how do we make it, instead of just me giving a sermon, a program, speaking about something to the audience, how do we as organizations or individuals participate and make it something more communal, as opposed to like Netflix where you're just receiving, your individual receiving. So this is going to be an interesting area for the community and centers to investigate. One thing that some centers are doing and some individuals which have done before is have messages come in. So people record messages, they send it to one organization. That organization makes a video and shares it. So there's that sense of participating. But again, how
Right.
do you replicate that on 15 nights of program, on 10 nights of program, on 30 nights of program? And another aspect is, do the speakers who usually have to travel around the world, which is really difficult because they leave their families and stuff, to
Yeah.
participate? And a lot of them have spent months preparing 10 nights of lectures. So
Yeah.
because everyone, especially now where things are going to be online, you need to make sure
Hmm.
that you are able to provide content that is not repetitive, and is something new and adds to the community and adds to knowledge. So people have to spend time to actually learn really difficult subjects, put that into 1 hour, 45 minutes, comprehensive for majority of the audience, and then deliver that. So there's a lot of preparation that goes from a lot of the speakers and the scholars that I know personally. They have put a lot of time for Muharram and Ramadan. So the
Yeah.
interesting thing is, how does it impact them? There's one benefit of not having to travel, but then would they be able to utilize the technology themselves at home to try and connect, or do they need to still fly out to that city? These are all topics that are going to come up, and inshallah centers will find answers for. But I think it's very hard to predict. We'll have to see how it pans out, right? We have to see what innovation us
Right.
youth, because we're quite useful, quite involved in the technology, how we're going to develop that for the benefit of our community. Now, inshallah, you have many children, and down the line when
Just
you're like a
one,
little
man.
bit
Just one.
older,
Just one.
and
I'm
then you
older
have
than you.
what's that?
I'm a little bit older, as in I'm older than you.
No, I said inshallah, you have more children as you get older.
Okay, okay. I was
Yeah,
gonna say.
as you get older, you get more children, and then
Inshallah,
you're sitting
inshallah.
around, they're all sitting around you, and you're in
Yeah.
retirement, and you say, "Let me tell you a story about 2020 when the
Oh man.
disease spread the world." How are you gonna describe this story that we're still living through? We don't know what the end result is, to your children and your grandchildren down the line.
Yeah, that's something I haven't really given much thought. But it's gonna be interesting. It's like it reminds me of when 9/11 happened, and then a few years after that. The main question is, where were you when
Yeah,
9/11 happened?
that's true.
It's becoming like that type of phenomenon. I guess what I would tell my children, hey, if or grandkids, like, listen, whenever they have a downtime or whenever they're down in their life, to always be grateful. I, I see so many people now. It's so strange how people would go to work and complain, oh, I wish I had only a few extra days off. I wish I had an extra week. Now you have multiple weeks and people are complaining, man, I wish I could go back to work. So I guess that's the best way to explain it to them. Like, even if you're constantly at home, it's not always the best thing. Like, it's still the struggles of just being quarantined in the house. You feel trapped, even though we have the liberty of going out.
Yeah.
It's just so strange, and I never experienced anything like this. It's difficult. I'm curious how you would tell someone in 5 to 10 years what it's been like, or maybe like you said, 20 years from now, where they never experienced this.
Yeah.
I'm sure, yeah, your children right now, they don't even know what's going on. Like,
Yeah.
oh, great. I stay home, play video games. But for adults, it's tough. It's tough.
I think it's going to be different for each individual. Like exactly like you said, when 9/11 happened in New York, and the planes went into the towers, and at that moment and at that in that day, everyone, like I remember where I was. Everyone who was around that time has memory, will remember where they were. So I think, but that was a kind of a very specific period in time, and it lasted for a
Right.
day. And obviously there was the repercussions, everything after. But that actual moment, this one is slightly different because it kind of crept up on us. It came up
Hmm.
slowly, and you start seeing things in China, and then it comes towards West Asia and Iran, and then Europe, and then bang, it hits America, right? And to be honest, I'm hoping that
Right.
it ends tomorrow, but the way it's going, it's going to have
I
a
was.
bigger
Yeah.
impact in America coming days and weeks than it has at the moment. So it's really difficult to summarize because, like you said, you have the isolation, you have the stuff that's affecting the global economy, you have the way that people are behaving, which is in some ways shocking, but we've seen it before, it's disturbing. So there's so many aspects to it, and you're trying to process all of these experiences from your perspective, from other people's perspective. There's constant news about it on various news channels. You can't really get
Right.
away from it, and you're trying to process it, understand and appreciate it, and then after some time passes, you still processing. Then you have something to say to the people in the future, so your kids or grandkids or whatever. But I think it's going to
Yeah.
be
I'll
a
say
process where
this.
we haven't finished it, right? So I think we're going to experience
Right.
more and reflect more and hopefully learn from more, right? We don't want to have this experience and not learn anything from it. That's the worst situation, is like we've gone through all of this and you come out the other side and we go back to the same mentality, same ideology we had before. Like one of the things that I can see in America, which experience you can see in Europe as well, but less, because yes, less, there's more of a social responsibility within European governments than it is in America. I can really see how many Americans, probably even New York as well, just across America, are suffering and are going to suffer more, and how this pandemic has kind of highlighted the flaws within the system of America, where the big corporations like Amazon, which is constantly in the news now for all the wrong things,
Right.
and the healthcare system not providing for doctors and nurses, protection equipment. And that's really devastating, that a country which is the richest country in the world is not doing that. So if we as people don't learn these lessons, go back and say, okay, how can we improve? Then I think this whole pandemic, which is like the biggest thing that's happened, even more important than the depression, or which was the biggest thing in American history at that time and whatever, it's like the Second World War, because it's affecting every single country, and we don't learn anything from it.
Hmm.
That's, I think, for me, the biggest tragedy.
I agree. And like you said, this is going to be a big process. We still have to wait to see how everything pans out. What's going to be interesting, and the answer that I don't have for yet, is how much of a lifestyle is going to change because of this. One thing could be just social gatherings. Imagine 20 years from now, I doubt it's probably going to change, but imagine in like 20 years, there's like rules and regulations as for how you should proceed with social gatherings. I'm interested to see that, like how it really people get affected, like lifestyle wise. And like, when is it going to be where everyone's going to go back to just regular handshakes or hugging without um, having that fear that they might catch something? I remember, because you asked pre-COVID earlier, in the early stages when we were still allowed to go out and about. Well, I play in this basketball league that a few individuals from the community created. So I remember in the early stages of Corona, when I went into one of my games to give like the handshake, people were just fist bumping. I was like, "What?" I'm like, "What is this? Come on, man, give me a handshake." Now, well, obviously we don't have those games, but I'm like, "Oh man." So, and of course, economy, everything is things to keep an eye
It's
for,
it's
eye
become
out
quite
for
Islamic
it.
because people just bow now. Have you noticed? They don't even shake hands.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
wanted
saw
to
Prince
tweet.
Charles doing that in an event. He put his hand out and they're like, no, no, no. It's just become
I
Islamic.
know it really has. So that's what I'm interested to see. How much is going to affect our behavior.
I find it really interesting because I think it was in New York, part of America, where they said they're encouraging everyone to wear a mask to cover their face. And you had like in Europe, like so there's a ban on niqab in many countries in Europe, France and
Right.
I think Belgium and Switzerland, places like that. But now France is saying you have to cover your face when you go out, you have to put a mask on. So it's like as a Muslim, obviously we have a different perspective than someone who's different background, but all of those things that we felt is kind of like oppression towards Muslim beliefs and practices that didn't really harm anyone are
Uh
now
huh.
being implemented and are becoming part of if you don't do it you'll get fined, right? So the
It's
irony
funny,
of it
right?
just it's just I don't want to laugh at it because it's not a laughing situation, but it's just weird.
No.
It's just weird how just one single thing so tiny that we can't even see has changed
Yeah.
everyone's perspective of certain things that, for example, we practice as Muslims of not shaking hand or covering one's face has now become like over almost within few days become like the thing that you have to do. If you don't do it, you're a bad person. So
Yeah. Hygiene.
obviously, yeah, hygiene, washing yourself. That goes on to the next question is like, how did you see the whole idea of people rushing first to buy toilet paper as the most important thing,
Yeah.
then everything else, food and just people going crazy. It was like you had a country, for example, like Iran, that has been in sanctions, that doesn't have access to all the things that, like, for example, we have in UK and America because of the largest amount of sanctions anywhere in the world, and yet even though it was hitting Iran really hard at one point, people were not rushing to the shops to buy loads of stuff and stock up. Why do you think in UK and in America and in the West, even though there is plentiful supply of things, the mentality was there for them to do that?
So for me, I think it's because Iran's been accustomed to having less for so long and not being able to get the adequate stuff that they're used to this, right? Versus U.S. and U.K., Australia, wherever, where they have always had so much, and now the fear that hey, we might not have any of these items, so that's why people went in a mass panic. It's almost similar like the guy that's always been slow his whole life versus someone that's really fast, and then when they get slow, they get confused,
Yeah.
like athletes in relative terms, but as far as the toilet paper thing, I didn't understand that either until I did a little bit of research. They said because toilet paper is being manufactured in China or something like that, and then they
Yeah.
have to stop the shipment. So that's why people are in mass hysteria. Although we are like first world countries, we will mass produce this stuff. We have the economics to do it, and I don't know. It's weird how people are fearing. And we've spoken about this before. I've seen this happen one other time when we got struck here in North Jersey
Mm.
by they call it Superstorm Sandy. It was like a
Yeah.
Category 3, 4 hurricane, and people went crazy filling up on gasoline, batteries. You couldn't find batteries, light bulbs,
How
candles,
long did
all
that
this,
last for?
and that was only a few weeks.
And that was still a
So
few
I
weeks
think,
of panic buying.
yeah, it was a few weeks, like a couple of weeks, and then that's it. I don't know why. That's a good question. Why we
So
have it in
I have a
within
theory
ourselves?
because there's a documentary I think it's either on RT or Al Jazeera where parts of America, I think there's industries that help build bunkers for individuals. So you as an individual, as a family, can go and buy a bunker made from cement
Wow.
and has the storage and beds and everything to
Hmm.
survive a kind of like a nuclear holocaust, right? So if you remember, America was the first one to build the
Hmm.
nuclear bomb. Then Russia came in the 50s, and it's from the 50s onwards when you started seeing a pattern of mentality, films, popular culture, where apocalyptic kind of stories become popular. So if you look, there was no zombie
Yeah.
movies. There was vampire movies. There was Frankenstein movies. There was never zombie movies until
Right.
after Russia, or the Soviet Union of that time, built nuclear bombs. Once they built nuclear bombs, and the idea of an apocalyptic incident coming where it ends life as we know it, and it changes everything. The whole ideas of zombies came in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
And then this idea of, okay, might happen, a bomb might go off, there might be a nuclear attack. How do I as an individual deal with it, right? If I'm in the house is going to get destroyed, so I need a bunker. So this whole idea of bunker mentality, of stocking up, making sure I got enough to last me. I mean, if there was a nuclear explosion, no matter how much you stock up, it's going to be radioactive. So they
Yeah.
panic buying and stuff like that. That's in Iran. They had 8 years of war, right? And in that 8 years of war,
Right.
everyone chipped in. There's the ideology of, look, we got to look after each other, right? With what little resources we have. Unfortunately, in the West, and America is a further extreme than Europe. And Europe is almost becoming similar to America, but not as bad. Is the idea of everybody looking out for themselves? Because I saw in the news when people started panic buying. The next thing people were panic buying were buying guns. There was queues outside of gun stores for people to
Right.
buy guns. So it's like, okay, 1 minute you're panic buying toilet paper, and next thing you're panic buying guns. So you're gonna end up shooting someone because they want to take your toilet paper. But in England, we don't have access to guns, right? So there's no panic
Yeah.
buying guns. There was panic buying toilet paper because there's still, and they kind of stopped it. They became a little bit more civilized. Government also came in, shops came and said, look, stop panic buying stuff. There's enough for everyone. There's no shortage of it. There isn't going to be no shortage of it. Just buy a few that you need at the moment. I don't know
Yeah.
if that happened in America where shops stepped in, supermarkets like Walmart and stuff. But in Iran, or places like in Iran, I only use Iran because I'm Iranian and I know more about Iran. I'm sure China and other places were like that as well. Countries where they've seen hardship, they're a little bit more, like you said, they're a little bit more used to it, but they're also a little bit more built to look after each other, no matter how much disagreements they have amongst each other. But when something like
Yeah.
this happens, they're like, look, we don't need to panic buy. We're going to look after each other as a society. And I feel like, unfortunately, America has a big, vast population that wants to help, that wants to be involved as a community. But unfortunately, the way the government and the way the elites have managed the financial systems and the institutions, a lot of people just don't think about others. They're just thinking about themselves. And that's where the problem lies, is because it's with individuals and the system. Um, the, I just want to
Yeah.
point out a few things that I noticed. For example, in I've just put up a page, and what this
Right.
shows is, so yesterday we had two nurses that passed away. One was Muslim, and
Oh.
one was non-Muslim in UK. Now,
No.
some
Yeah.
newspapers discussed that on their front pages. Some didn't. The ones that discussed it or mentioned the non-Muslim nurse, which is fine. She's fighting front line. Is fair. None of them mentioned the Muslim one, right? This is
Really?
UK newspapers.
Oh
Then we
boy.
had the first doctors that passed away in the UK, and I don't know if you guys heard about this in America, were actually three doctors who were Muslim and Arab background. None of them were born in the UK. They'd come here, they'd
Mhm.
served the NHS, and they were the three first doctors who passed away from coronavirus, looking after the community. So it's things like that that um, should also remind us, going back to that issue about before this happened, people were scared of or didn't appreciate, say, Muslims who want to wear niqab, or the whole not shaking hand. I'm just hoping that when people see things like this, and I'm sure you have many hardworking Muslims in New Jersey, New York, and across
Yeah.
America, who are literally putting their lives on the line at difficult situations, trying to serve the community, not caring about what that person's religious or ethnicity or racial background is. They're just there to serve any patient that comes in. And I just hope one thing
Yeah.
that is taken away from this situation, amongst many, is that the community which is Muslim and the community which is non-Muslim can appreciate each other a little bit better. And there's that level of respect for the Muslims instead of this idea that unfortunately we've had since Brexit, the whole voting of
Yeah.
Britain leaving European Union was
Right.
to blame foreigners and immigrants for all the ills and the problems that financially and otherwise face UK. And this should show that, look, Muslims are part of this community and they chip in and they give their lives for this community. Being, I'm talking about UK. And I think the same for America. I mean,
Hmm.
is that something that you've noticed and you're hoping that maybe will be reflected in the future?
Yeah, I agree in that, but I don't know if we've seen to the extent of you guys. Well, I have to do more research on seeing. I know there's a lot of Muslims that are in the medical field. I'm not too sure if many of them have passed away due to the COVID and it's just not being reported on. But I think in a time like this, in a crisis like this, race, religion, all that goes out the window. It's just about serving humanity and helping each other out. And I agree. I hope uh, at the end of this, everyone realizes that no matter where you come from, your background, your ethnicity, religion, whatever, that the bottom line is we're all the same and we should treat each other with respect, dignity, and help each other out. That's the most important part. Um, and that's something that actually in our news cycles they're trying to preach about,
Yeah.
especially for the elderly, for people that are disabled or whatever. Like, go out and ask your neighbor, hey, what can I do for you? So yeah,
It's
and
funny you
that's
should say
something
that.
I hope when
I
it's
just found an article just between what you're saying.
yeah,
And it's from article was written in 2019, May 26. And it's from New
right.
York Post, and it says thousands back doctor suspended for asking Muslim patient to remove veil. 83,000 people signed the petition. Now,
On the New York Post.
on the New York Post. So that
But
level of Islamophobia is is clearly there, right? Just one article I just really truly found now. I don't have to go far. There's probably more. I'm hoping that New Yorkers
but
and
I
rest of
think
Americans.
New York Post is like I think New York Post is I don't know. I don't want to get into them about Islam, but yeah, go ahead.
But don't forget, there is this thing. There's this concept that they have. This academic called Stuart Hall. He came up with the concept that there is no fixed meaning in something, and then people either misrepresent it or represent it. So if we take that concept and say, look, the story happened where a doctor asked a woman to remove her veil. Well, that's a fact. That's what's happened, right? 83,000 people signed a petition.
Right.
Again, that's a fact. So even if this New York Post may be a right-leaning or anti-Muslim newspaper, they've represented certain facts that actually happened, right? That can't be taken away from
Mhm.
it. That's not misrepresentation.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is, I hope that after this has happened and people who might have signed that petition see that, okay, I had to go to the doctor, and the Muslim treated me and he didn't ask me anything about my faith and ask me to change anything about me, and he was serving me
Right.
with the least amount of equipment, and also all of these things are taken into consideration because of this pandemic, and he takes it back and he thinks about it, or she thinks about it and realizes, okay, maybe there's more to these stories that are put up in newspapers or TV or Fox or whatever about Muslim
Yeah.
migrants coming here being a danger or so forth and so on. Maybe there's a little bit more to that than they're letting on. So maybe they're only showing an aspect of the truth. Maybe I need to go and find out what the rest of the truth is. So this is something that I hope.
You would hope. You would hope. Yeah.
Now I want to
Uh,
also show that. So I've just put up a on the browser, Garden State Rookies YouTube channel. As you can see, they've got multiple kind of what's it called, podcasts going. Now that's
mhm.
not much sport is happening. What kind of other subjects are you looking at discussing in your podcast coming up?
So yeah, there's a plethora of topics to be talked about. One thing that we're thinking of doing is how these people, we call it clout chasing. People
Clout
that
chasing.
clout chasing, people that do ridiculous things to go viral. Like this one girl, she was licking a toilet
Ah, I read about it. It was
somewhere,
TikTok, right? Oh, Instagram.
something like that. So
Yeah,
this is something we want to address. Like, people,
yeah.
get it together. What are you doing? Or we had a situation where people weren't practicing social distancing in Miami. The beaches was open. People were
This
out
was
there partying.
recently, I
So
think, right?
yeah, it was recent. So that's one topic, and I think there's a lot to be
Didn't
talked
a
about.
group of people went on spring break in, is it New Mexico or Mexico or something recently?
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. They interviewed them like, "What are you doing down here?"
Yeah,
Like, "Oh, we already spent the money. We're gonna come, and nothing's gonna happen."
yeah.
Yeah, okay, we'll see.
Well, this is interesting.
But
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
But these people that have gone on holiday and kind of got stuck. I mean, this is in America; they can just drive back. That's fine. But we have a lot of British and you probably have Americans as well being in the news. They're stuck in India or far off places and they can't come back because no flights, or some guy had an offer of coming back for his family members, cost him £64,000, eighty
Wow.
thousand dollars, ridiculous prices. I remember when this was happening. I was on holiday with my wife in Malaysia, and I said to her,
Right.
"Okay, as soon as we get back, that's it. We're not going anywhere. We're not booking nothing." But we said, "Okay, we have a trip planned to Middle East." So we had a trip planned to Iran, and then a trip planned to Iraq to do dental kind of
Mhm.
voluntary work. And we had booked all the internal flights, the hotel, spent all the money. And we came back, and I started seeing this getting worse in before it coming to England. Started seeing
Right.
it worse than China and then Iran. And as soon as I realized there's traces of Iran, I said, "That's it. We're not going to Iran." And she's like, "But why? We have our flight booked. Government has given us any advice to not to go." I said, "Look, forget the government. I'm telling you, this is going to get really worse. We're not going to go anywhere." Within, I think, a week, airline emailed us saying, "Look, your flights are cancelled, full refund." The other places that we were booked in Iran, the hotels and everything,
Yeah.
internal flights and everything like that, they're like, "Fine, we'll refund you as well." Usually in Iran, they don't refund you anything if you book it, but they said, "We'll
No.
refund you." And then still, the government had said, "Don't go anywhere." But then in time, as we realized, we're glad we didn't go. Iraq closed its borders with Iran. Turkey closed its borders with Iran. Pakistan closed its borders with Iran. So we couldn't even come out if we had gone in, right? The flights were being
Mhm.
cancelled. So what I had predicted is this is coming. So
Yeah.
forget any money we spent. If we lose the money, I don't care. We're going to be somewhere where um, we know the system. We're not, it's our country. We can do whatever we need to do. We're families here as well, and it's our home. We're not stuck. A lot of people don't take that kind of, we call it basira, right? This
Yeah.
foresight. They don't use foresight. They're like, "Oh, but the government has told me I can go on holiday. They haven't said I can't go." It's like, sometimes forget what the government says. Most of these governments that we're relying on to protect us are doing things delayed because of financial implications, because of
Of
their
course. Of
own,
course.
kind of dynamics that they're trying to deal with. You need to look after yourself. It doesn't matter how much money
Yeah.
we spent. Do you want to be stuck in, for example, India or Sri Lanka on holiday and the holiday goes horrible? Or do you want to be back in England and forget the money that you spent, even if you can't get it back? At least if something happens, especially the elderly, you have access to a healthcare system that will provide you a better healthcare system than if you're stuck in a
Exactly.
foreign country. So a lot of people don't take that into consideration. And unfortunately, the youth that you mentioned were going on holiday, they probably think they're immune to it because, oh, it only affects
Mm,
old people, right? We
exactly.
catch it and then we're going to be fine. But this is a good experience for especially people within our community who I think see this is like, you need to plan for yourself and your family. Don't rely on other people. Don't rely on,
Right.
authorities. If you see danger coming, plan for it. Doesn't matter how much money you may lose. Your health is the most important thing. And Islam teaches us that health and the safety of human beings is above everything. One
Of
life
course.
saved as if you saved the whole of humanity, especially your own life and then your family's lives. So I think it's one of, I mean, there's so many lessons we can take from this whole situation, but one of them I think is starting to learn to have basira, foresight of when we see danger coming, what do we do? Let's refer to our elders. They know, right? Let's ask their advice, not wait for, what the authorities tell us what is not, what we're not allowed to do. Let's see what,
Right.
because our parents have experience, right? Our elders have experience, and that's why we need to make sure they're safe. We need to make sure that they
Hmm.
don't get into the hospital system, because if they get into the hospital and they're unwell, and God forbid they don't get through it, we lose, 60, 70 years, a whole lifetime of this person's experience, as well as obviously them being close to us and loved ones. But they have benefit. A lot of people, sometimes we think that the older generation, but they don't know anything about what we're going through. Now they've gone through what we've gone through as youngsters. They've come
Exactly.
out through the other side, and they've probably seen harder things than we have, right? My parents
Of
have seen
course.
wars in Iran. Other parents have seen wars in Iraq or Afghanistan, and they're
Hmm.
strong. They've come through it, and they're tough, and they've set up businesses and homes. We got, look after them so we can learn from them. And that's one thing that I would advise the youth, especially watching this, is to protect your elders, all members of your family, but especially your elders, and look after them, and try to use their knowledge as much as you can.
I agree. To piggyback on what you said, because look what happened with these people that went on these cruise ships.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've read the stories.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
stranded out there, and no one is willing to dock them, and the people are dying on the ships. But I had a near experience, almost happen like in a situation where I was going to be stuck in a country. So recently we went to
This is because
Dubai.
of this or another situation?
No, no, this is because of when they killed Sulaiman Qasim.
Hajj Qasim Soleimani.
I forget. Yes. So me and our family like, yeah, it's nice that we're in vacationing in Dubai, but what if we get stuck here in a couple of weeks
Oh, you
because
were
there was
actually
a
there when
threat?
that happened.
Yeah, so
You
there
were
was
literally in the
threats that
middle.
they, yeah, there was threats that they were gonna attack
They were gonna hit
Dubai. This and
Dubai. Yeah.
yeah, so me and the family were like, oh no,
How did we
it,
get out of there?
it wasn't even, yeah. So I could speak a little bit on having that fear that getting stuck somewhere and not being able to go back home. Obviously, Dubai is a nice country, but you want to be able to go back home. So there's that. And to your point of foresight, yeah, we have to be aware. We have to pay attention to things, get the clues, the foreshadowing to prevent. It's just senseless. I think even now people are, there was, I think New York Post, they put up that people are not taking money for refunds on their cruise ships. They just putting that credit towards early 2021.
Yeah, people are doing that, airlines,
It's
aren't they?
like, yeah, they're saying about 40 something percent of people do not take the money back. They just want credit for their next flight or wherever they're vacationing. And it's crazy. Like, just take your money back, relax, save it, put it somewhere because we don't know what's going to happen.
I mean,
And
yeah,
you're
exactly,
absolute,
because you don't know if this cruise is gonna be even
they could
like,
file for bankruptcy.
yeah,
Then what are
like,
you going to
people
do?
telling me, oh, should I be getting refund from my airline? Get a refund from your airline. Get a refund from your holiday. If you can't, don't pay the rest of the. If you pay the deposit, don't pay the rest of it, because you don't know if this company will survive. It's become like really difficult for these companies to survive, especially you know, holiday companies. Most companies, let alone holiday company, a company that sells clothes is having problems. Imagine a company that relies on flight and no one's flying on it. How many of them are going to get merged?
Ex-
How many of them are going to not accept the voucher from the other company when they've merged together? You don't know, right? So it's, I think people, and also like your situation in Dubai was different. You couldn't foresee something like that happening. No one foresaw it, right?
right,
But the
right.
fact that you realize, okay, we need to get out as soon as it happened, that shows foresight. A lot of people are like, oh, wait, that's fine. We're in Dubai. It's nothing to do with Iraq or Iran. It's like, no, because when Iran then retaliated, you guys were right in the middle of it. Because if something from Dubai happened, Iran was gonna hit Dubai. So that's you showing foresight. Like, we need to get out of here, right? And that's what I'm
Right.
saying is, we need to encourage our youth to start to look at things in a different perspective and not be what's it called, disconnected from the society that they live in. It shouldn't be just go to uni, come, or go to work, come home,
I
just with my
agree.
family,
I agree.
Netflix. No, you need to listen to what's going on. I listen to a lot of podcasts in America, so and not the mainstream news. as well as that, I listen to progressive and alternative, and this debate about Bernie Sanders, which the American audience would identify, and yourself will identify with more, about do we choose Biden or do we choose Bernie? Is Biden, Joe Biden, more of the same of before, and is Bernie's someone's going to come and change things? Or if we choose Biden, Trump is going to win anyway because he's going to just destroy Biden, because Biden is showing symptoms of cognitive problematic behavior, like not remembering things and talking. So all of this stuff, I think our youth need to be. You don't have to be involved, like active, be a politician, but
Yeah.
you need to understand what the politics of the country that you live in is going on, because it affects you. Because if Donald Trump wins again, it's going to affect you as a Muslim, even as non-Muslim. If Joe Biden wins, it's going to affect you. If Bernie wins, it's going to affect you. You need
Mhm.
to know what's going on, and the way to know what's going on is open your eyes and investigate and find out. Read different news. Don't just read whatever one news outlet gives you, CNN or whatever. Search everywhere, find out different perspectives, find out what's going on. This way, when
Mhm.
things happen, you can connect all of them together, and you can start thinking outside of the box. And that's what we're going to have to do, because society is changing in such a rapid way. You need to be smart and think. If you just follow what normal mainstream society news tells you, you become a sheep, and then you're going to get caught out. And
Yeah.
you won't see it when it comes round the corner, because you haven't been prepared for it. So I'm glad that you were having that mentality when you went on holiday, and inshallah you continue that, and your family members and your younger brother, he realizes that and learns that from you. It's been wonderful talking
I
to you. If there's anything else you'd
Thank you.
like to
Thank
add.
you. Yeah, just a few last things, because you've said some interesting points, and I agree with it. I used to be one of those people that, you know what, I don't really care for the news. I don't watch the news. I'm just gonna live my life. But in actuality, you have to be um, awoke to these things. You got to understand them. And I got a better understanding. Funny, it's because I was watching the stock market, and there
Okay.
was a few stocks I wanted to get into. And it's so funny how if the if the president comes out tomorrow and says Walmart is a great company, we're investing, the stocks just skyrocket. But in in better terms of how does it affect Muslims, to be honest, yeah, I'm shielded here in my New Jersey, New York tri-state area because we're so multicultural, and racism is not that profound. But here in New Jersey, if you go south, maybe you go like an hour 30-minute drive, then you see how society has changed, and then
Yeah.
you see how people look at you different,
Hmm.
all because of what has happened in this last presidency. A lot of people say, oh, Democratic, Trump, Biden, they're all one and the same. Actuality is not. Sadly, you would think, yeah, one and the same, but it's not. It's a big difference between Obama and then what Trump is. So you have to be cognizant of these things. And like you said, I agree. Just look at all news outlets. Like just the other day, I was on Sky News, and your Secretary of Defense, what Matt Hancock, he had to come out and say, yeah, it's good weather this weekend, but please, people, practice social distancing. And it's interesting. Yeah, you have to be knowledgeable everywhere. But that's about it for me. I mean, you've made valid points. I agree. I hope we could keep on doing this. Me and you talk more
Yeah,
on these topics
I
and
love the
other
shows
topics.
that you're
Yeah.
doing. So keep up that good work. I'm
Thank you.
hoping
Thank you
some.
for your
We'll put a
support.
link into the description of this podcast to the Garden State Rookies, and hopefully you guys be talking about interesting issues where, and I know politics is very difficult to get into, because you don't want to
Right.
necessarily
Right.
show one side that you favor or not, right? But I think
Hmm.
if you, at the moment, especially at the moment, if there's less sport that you can talk about, is just talk about issues that I think are important for the community, and obviously I'm talking about the whole New York community, things that are happening, with the whole like kind of rent and mortgages and all of these issues, just to hopefully build up that awareness for your audience as well, and the
Yeah.
community. I think you guys are doing a great job, and as your president
Thank you.
says, It's wonderful. It's great. It's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
I mean, that's one good thing about him. He
He's
is an
positive about
entertainer.
everything.
Yeah, he's an entertainer. You'll never get bored. But outside of politics, there's so much things to talk about, like how are people coping with the
Yeah,
quarantine life,
economy,
and
healthcare.
what are they doing as far as keeping themselves entertained outside of dumb challenges. But we'll see how it goes. Again,
Yeah,
thank you so
that's
much
another
for
podcast.
having me, man. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
bro.
much. You look after
Thank
yourself.
you for
Look after your
having
family
me.
as well.
Likewise. Thank you for everyone else tuning in. Thank you so much, guys.
Take care.